Do you hate people who are different from you?
No, sir. I wake up every single morning and say, love the people, love the call.
Do you support the rule of law?
Absolutely.
Isn't a big part of your job to enforce the immigration laws?
Yes, sir, it is.
Can we agree that illegal immigration is illegal?
We should all agree on that. Yes, sir.
How many people do you think the Biden administration allowed into our country in violation of our immigration laws?
Unfortunately, they didn't keep good records. We don't even know how many kids were let into the country. Estimation is somewhere around 340,000 kids that we're trying currently to look for. With the numbers are estimated between 12 and 20 million came in illegally over the 4 years of the Biden administration.
And President Biden ignored the immigration laws with the cooperation and indeed, in some cases, the encouragement of some members of Congress, did he not?
Yes, sir. That's my recollection of it.
Why do you think the Biden administration and some of my colleagues, your former colleagues, why do you think they believe in open borders?
Sir, I have my theory behind that, and I would love to entertain the thought, but I'll try to keep my thoughts to myself and just do my job here. But I think I know my theory is pretty strong.
Well, tell me about it.
I'll probably get myself in trouble.
It's okay. You're already in trouble.
Yeah, but I don't know if this is a place to give my thoughts. I try to work in facts as much as I can, but it's hard to explain why they would allow that many people to come in and turn our streets into lawless cities and lawless towns.
I mean, does any other, let me try it a different way. Do you think vetting people at our border is racist?
No, sir. It's exactly what we should do because we're charged, CBP and Department of Homeland Security is charged with keeping our homeland safe. We have to know who's coming in. We catch terrorists on a weekly basis trying to enter this country illegally or already entered this country illegally.
Do you think vetting people at our border, it sounds like you do, is prudent?
It is absolutely vital to the job we do to protecting our homeland.
And every other country vets people at the border.
They should, yes.
What happened at Delaney Hall?
Well, a lot of claims were made, and they just absolutely weren't true. The first one came out and said it was overcrowded. We have today, I believe, under 700 detainees there. It's licensed for just over 1,000 beds. We have twice the square footage at Delaney Hall than the state penitentiary does in New Jersey. They said that the medical condition was horrible. We had twice as much medical staff per person than the state penitentiary does in New Jersey.
What happened with the protesters?
Well, the protesters is interesting. The governor and the state officials were going out and saying that they were peaceful protesters and ICE was agitating them. That all changed when the governor finally allowed the state police to do their job. And by the way, they're professionals, and the locals there were absolutely professionals. When they came in, they quickly realized these aren't peaceful protesters. These are rioters.
Were some of the protesters or rioters violating the law?
Absolutely. Every time you verbally assault an officer by not saying that you're, whatever words you want to use, but when you say you're going to kill them and all their family, that's against the law. That's violating federal policy. When you put your hands on an officer, we had officers bit, we had officers scratched, we had officers poked, we had officers hit, we had objects thrown at them, we had car windows smashed in. All that is a federal crime and punishable, and we have zero tolerance for it. And those that we could arrest then, we did arrest. Those that we have on video, we're going through the video today, and we will eventually find you and arrest you as well and charge you.
Now, you have the right in America to protest, don't you?
I support the First Amendment, but you do it in a peaceful manner.
But you don't have the right to protest violently or in violation of the law, do you?
That is correct, Senator.
Isn't it? Last question, I know. Has it been your experience that most cops, most Border Patrol officers, most ICE agents will leave you alone unless you do illegal stuff.
And the senator's time has expired, so if you can keep this quick.
That is absolutely correct, and they love doing their job. They don't do it for the money. They do it because they're called to do it. And regardless if you're a local PD, you're a sheriff, you're state, or you're federal, all of them are willing to do their job because they feel called to do so. And you're not, for the most part, there's always a few bad apples, but for the most part, those officers, unless you're breaking the law, they're not going to bother you.
Okay.
That's my experience anyways.
Mr. President, we both know that there are people in Washington who like to muddy the water to make it look deep. They don't want the American people to know the truth. Because for these people to which I'm referring, truth is a concept that does not interest them. Politics does. Now, there's been a lot of controversy in and around the United States Senate for the last 2 weeks. If we're honest with ourselves, we have to admit that the Senate has been functioning like a broken arm with the bone sticking out. That's not anybody's fault, in my judgment, on my side of the aisle. It's certainly not the majority leader's fault. So I want to try to refocus us on the issue. I don't really want to talk about the ballroom or the anti-weaponization fund or any of the myriad of issues that my Democratic friends have tried to inject into our discussion. I want to talk about the issue. And the issue is this: are we going to fund the Department of Homeland Security or are we not? Part of DHS, as we call it, as you know, Mr. President, is funded. But a very important part is not. The Border Patrol and ICE. We're paying them as best we can out of another pool of funds that's about to run out of money. Why are they not funded? Because my Democratic colleagues have refused. At one point, my Democratic friends agreed to fund Border Patrol and ICE. And then they changed their mind. And they said, no, we're not going to do it. Which forced Republicans, if we want to see that portion of DHS funded, to proceed under what we call reconciliation, where we don't need Democratic votes. I regret that that's the case, but we're doing what we have to do. Why are we having this controversy? I don't get it completely. I don't. Unless you're industrial strength stupid, you know that illegal immigration is illegal. And that's what our Border Patrol agents and ICE agents do. They enforce the law. And we have a problem with respect to immigration. During the Biden administration, with the encouragement of some, not all, but with the encouragement of some, but not all, Democrats, opened the borders. They said, come on in. And about 8 to 12 million, some say 20 million people did. Some of them were good people and are good people. They're still breaking the law. Some of them who are here are not. They're rapists, and they're murderers, and they're sex traffickers, and they're drug dealers, and they're pedophiles. We don't know which is which. We don't know where they are. And it falls to the responsibility of the Department of Homeland Security, in part through Border Patrol and ICE, to find out. Now, why did this happen? Why do we now need Border Patrol and ICE more than ever? You know, I've thought about that a lot. It could be just pure, plain, vanilla incompetence. It could be that the people that President Biden put in charge of immigration and securing the border were not qualified to play dead in a Western movie. It also could be and could have been intentional. I think some of my Democratic friends, not all of them, I'm talking the Plattner wing of the Democratic Party, the Mayor Mamdani wing of the Democratic Party, the Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez wing of the Democratic Party, the wing of the Democratic Party that's in control. Some of them believe that vetting people at the border is racist. They do. Doesn't matter that every other country in the world vets people at their borders. These members of the, whatever you want to call it, progressive wing, loon wing, woktopus wing, whatever you want to call that wing of the Democratic Party, they think that vetting people at the border is racist. There are other folks who support open borders for political reasons. I think they honestly think that if they admit a bunch of people into America in violation of the immigration laws or not, that it's a rich source of potential voters. We're not supposed to say that, but I really do believe that. Not much happens around here that doesn't have a political bent to it. But regardless, we have a problem. And that's what we have to deal with. And that's what we're going to be voting on, I hope, in the next couple of days. If you disagree with the law, this is America, you're entitled to disagree with it. I get it. Try to change it. Go change it. But you can't just ignore our immigration laws. They're not some second-tier statutes that you can ignore without consequence, that you can ignore when you think it's convenient. They're the law, and we have to enforce the law. And more to the point, we have to clean up the mess that President Biden and some of my Democratic colleagues in the Plattner wing, the Ocasio-Cortez wing, the Mamdani wing, whatever you want to call those Democrats who believe it, created. And find more to even to that point, we have to have Border Patrol or Border Patrol and ICE officers to do it. We have to. The other point I would make, we see the pushback by this wing of my Democratic Friends Party. We see what's going on in New Jersey. It's despicable. Look, you have the right to protest. That's as American as the NFL or baseball. You have the right to protest. You don't have the right to protest violently. And what we've seen at the Delaney Hall Detention Center, we've seen ICE officers and some Border Patrol officers. We've seen the protesters cursing at them and spitting at them and threatening their families and hitting them and scratching them and biting them and blocking ingress and egress in and out of the detention center. They're breaking the law. And they've been arrested. I think the Border Patrol and ICE and the state law enforcement officials in New Jersey have showed a lot of restraint. But what the protesters did, not all of them, was illegal. It was illegal. You can't hit a cop just because you don't like him. And here's a free tip. I know you know this, Mr. President. Most Border Patrol agents, most ICE agents, most cops, they will leave you alone unless you do illegal stuff. But if you do illegal stuff, they're going to enforce the law. So let me end as I began. We need to vote to fund Border Patrol and ICE. These men and women are running out of money. I am sorry that my Democratic colleagues have taken the position that they want to defund ICE. They have every right to believe that. I'm sorry that they have taken the position they want to defund the Border Patrol. My Democratic friends have every right to believe that. But they're wrong. I have the right to my opinion. And if they don't want to fund them, they need to go change the immigration laws. Until then, we've got to enforce them. And we're going to have the chance here in the next couple of days. And all we're going to be voting on, you're going to see all kind of amendments and talking about everything in the world. All we will be voting on, do we or do we not want to fund Border Patrol and ICE? Do we or do we not want to enforce America's immigration laws in accordance with due process and the rule of law? And that's the issue that's going to be before us. And I'm ready to saddle up and ride. I'm ready to get to it. I'm tired of all the rhetoric and the tangential issues, and I'm tired of all that. Let's get after it. Let's do the right thing. Congratulations, gentlemen. Mr. Flowers, I want to ask you about an article you wrote last year called "The Departmentalism in the Age of Trump." Do you remember that?
I do, Senator. It was a speech that I gave.
Yes, yeah. And as I read it, you espouse the view that each department of the federal government has a responsibility to interpret the Constitution. Did you mean each department or each branch? Tell me about that article.
They'd be synonymous in this context. I was referring to both branches. The theory of departmentalism is the view.
So you were referring to branches?
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. And the theory of departmentalism, which Abraham Lincoln is perhaps the most prominent person to espouse it, is the view that every single federal official takes an oath to the Constitution and has a duty to abide by it. So you sometimes hear people say that the Constitution is what the courts say it is. And that's not quite right. Every official has a duty to interpret the Constitution. So, for example, if the Supreme Court okay.
I get it. So Congress has a right to interpret the Constitution, right?
Correct, and a duty to do so.
Okay. What happens if Congress interprets the Constitution one way and the United States Supreme Court interprets it another? Who wins?
So if that law is challenged in court, the court has a duty to say what the law is, and with respect to those parties, they'll issue a judgment. So with respect to those parties, they'll win.
I get all that, but who wins?
So in that case, the court would win with respect to the parties. The law would, Congress would be free to pass the same law again.
Given the fact that the executive branch and the legislative branch of the federal government both have the authority to interpret the Constitution according to your theory, as well, of course, as the courts. Is there any, suppose the executive branch interprets the Constitution one way and the Supreme Court interprets it another way, who wins?
So the court will win when the case comes, the court will win in the sense that it will interpret the law, and its interpretation of the law will be binding on the parties in the case before it. But it's not necessarily binding on future parties. So the executive would be free to try the same thing again with another party.
So are you saying that if the president disagrees with an interpretation by the Supreme Court, but the president is not a party, the president can ignore the Supreme Court ruling?
He could certainly not ignore the Supreme Court ruling with respect to the parties to whom the judgment applies. But Abraham Lincoln, famous...
No, I'm trying to get drilled down to understand, Counselor, what you really said. Let's suppose that the Supreme Court issued, well, let's take Calais, the Calais decision. Okay, the Supreme Court ruled. Some like it, some don't. The president was not a party, nor was Chairman Grassley.
Mm-hmm.
If they disagree with Calais, the president or Chairman Grassley, can they just ignore it? Is that what you're saying?
No, I wouldn't say ignore it. They're obligated to carry the judgment into effect insofar as that.
Tell me what you do. I'm confused. I'm sorry. I agree with you. Everybody should pay attention to the Constitution.
Can I provide a concrete example from history?
No, because I'm running out of time. I'm sorry. We'll talk about this later. I just don't. Do you think any of us have the right to defy a federal court order?
Generally, no, with an exception.
What do you mean generally?
So there's an exception for orders issued in cases where the court lacks jurisdiction, setting that aside.
Wait, there's an exception for what?
If a court issues an order in a case in which it lacks jurisdiction, then parties are not bound by that order, but generally speaking, they are
Why
bound.
don't you just appeal it in that case?
You can do that, but the courts have...
So if in your opinion, the court didn't have jurisdiction, you can ignore it?
Again, generally, no, but there's a long-stated exception in the law that courts have recognized for when the lower court lacked jurisdiction. Now, I would never advise a client to do that, because if you're wrong...
I hope not.
Right.
I mean, this business of ignoring a federal court order is nonsense. It's nonsense on stilts. You may not agree with a court order. That's fine. This is America. You don't have to agree with it. You can. That's why God made courts of appeal. But you're not suggesting that we don't all have to give me an instant. I'm way over. Give me an instance where you think a federal court order could be ignored.
The only one of which I'm aware is if a court had no jurisdiction over the case and issues the order anyway, and you don't follow it, you cannot later be held in contempt for doing so. But aside from that, parties must follow court orders.
Who gets to determine, this is my last question, Mr. Chairman, you've been very patient. Who gets to determine whether they lack jurisdiction?
Effectively, the appeals court. That's why I would never advise a client to do this, because if you're wrong that they lack jurisdiction, then you're going to be held in contempt.
All right, thank you. Mr. Secretary, thank you for being here. We need more ships. We're going to give you money to build more ships. You need to get those ships built. You need to build as many of them as you can in Louisiana, but let's get them built. General, is Russia our friend?
Sir, they're not.
Between Ukraine and Russia, who do we want to win that war?
Well, we prefer there not be a war, but
Well,
obviously,
but there is. Who do we want to win?
obviously we want Ukraine to stand independently and not be consumed by Russia.
Okay. Now, when Putin went into Ukraine, he thought he was going to roll in and take it over in 2 days like thunder on a summer night, didn't he?
I believe he did.
But the Ukrainian people have fought back, haven't they?
Yes, sir. They have fought back.
And they now have some of the most sophisticated drone technology in the history of the world, don't they?
Sir, they do. They're doing very well with drones.
And they're giving, with the limited resources they have, they're giving Russia a curb stomping, aren't they?
I would say they are.
In fact, they have knocked out, with their limited resources, 40% of Russia's export ability of their oil. Since January, using their drones and limited cruise missiles, they have hit oil and gas facilities within Russia over 100 times. Not on the border, within Russia, right?
Yes, sir.
And Putin was so scared, he almost had to cancel their military parade. Didn't he?
Well, I'm not sure of that, sir, but I will take your word for that, sir.
Okay. All right. Well, how much money? Now, let me just lead you. The world has $300 billion of frozen Russian assets in escrow, don't we?
I don't know, sir.
I do. It's $300 billion. And 2/3 of that, about $225 billion, is sitting in Europe, isn't it?
Again, sir, I'm not sure of that.
Well, I am. And I'm surprised, no disrespect, that you don't know. And Europe has asked our permission to take that $200 to $225 billion. Well, I mean, strike that. That $225 billion, humor me, that's sitting there frozen. Isn't not a single penny is American taxpayer money, is it?
I don't believe it is.
No. It all belongs to Russia, doesn't it?
I believe that is correct.
And the
sir.
EU has asked our permission to take that money and give it to Ukraine so they can knock Russia in the next week and let's get this war over. That's a good idea, don't you think?
Well, I think anything that can be done to stop that war is a good idea, sir.
Would you support giving that $225 billion, no taxpayer money in America, to Ukraine?
Well, again, sir, that's outside my purview as a service chief.
Okay. Admiral, let me ask you a question. Would it be fair to say, based on his public and notorious comments, both before, during, and after the summit between President Xi and President Trump, that President Xi, how can I put this? He's nervous as a pregnant nun about what we're going to do on Taiwan, isn't he?
Sir, I do think he is concerned about our capability against any invasion of Taiwan.
I mean, talk about telegraphing your insecurities. I mean, he talked about it right out of the chute. He's practically sending us a television ad saying, I'm very worried about Taiwan. Now, we don't want a war with China, do we?
Absolutely not.
No. We want stability, though, with China, don't we?
Yes, sir.
And China doesn't recognize, President Xi doesn't recognize charity, does he?
I can't speak to that, but I would say probably not.
Well, he appreciates strength, doesn't he?
I would say so, yes.
If you're in a bar fight with President Xi and you start quoting Socrates like we did under President Biden, you're going to get your rear end whipped, aren't you?
That's probably not a good course of action.
Yes. Okay, so why don't we go ahead? Don't you think it'd be a good idea for us to gain leverage to make weapons sales to Taiwan right now?
Sir, again, these things are very complex and a full calculus of all the levers of power that are being negotiated and worked. So generally,
I'm sorry, what more do we have to know, Admiral? President Xi has telegraphed his anxiety, his insecurity, now that he knows that America has learned how to fight. We want leverage. We want stability, not a hot war. We want leverage. What's his insecurity? Taiwan. Why don't we just go ahead and sell the weapons to Taiwan that Taiwan wants? The president can call President Xi and say, hey, President Xi, don't take it personally. Don't get excited. Don't get your bowels in an uproar. But I'm selling these weapons. Why wouldn't we do that?
we definitely want Taiwan to be as strong as they can be, sir.
They'd be stronger with those weapons, though, wouldn't they?
Yes, sir.
Don't you think we ought to sell them?
Sir, I'm not going to get in front of the administration's overall calculus on that. That's just not I'm not going to make a statement on that as a service chief.
Okay.
But the capabilities that we're talking about would make them more effective.
I know cost of living is a problem in America today. We all know that, Mr. President. I like to say when moms and dads go to sleep at night and can't, you know, one of the things they're worried about is the cost of living. I get that. What could we do to help? Well, obviously, one thing we could do would be to lower taxes. We've got to be careful how we do that because we don't want to increase the deficit. We don't want to just borrow money to do that. Another thing we could do to help would be to lower interest rates. If we lowered interest rates, people would pay less interest on their credit cards, on their car loans, on their house notes. Well, what could we do, Mr. President, and you know this, to spend less so we could cut taxes and also lower interest rates? One of the things we could do is stop fraud. One of the things we can do is stop the outrageous fraud in our Medicaid program. Now, look, I want to be very clear here. I'm proud of Medicaid. I mean, I'm proud of the fact that in our country, if you're too poor to be sick, we will pay for your doctor. That's not true in every country, as you know, Mr. President. Some countries, they'll just let you die in a ditch. We don't do that in America. We will pay for your medical care. But that's outrageously expensive. It's okay, money well spent, but it's very, very expensive. And one of the ways we pay for people's care, particularly for low-income Americans, but also now even more so for middle-class Americans since Obamacare passed, is through Medicaid. We spend almost $1 trillion on Medicaid every year. And once again, I'm not speaking against the concept of Medicaid. We don't want people to die in America. It's one of the things that separates us from other people. But we spend almost $1 trillion a year, and the federal government, some people don't know this, pays for 67% of all Medicaid spending. Some people refer to Medicaid as a federal state program, and it is. The state puts up some of the money, but the federal government puts up most of the money. We pay for about 67% of all the spending in Medicaid. And Medicaid keeps going up. I mean, I've seen studies that show it's going up anywhere consistently between 6 and 8% every single year. And when you're spending $1 trillion and it goes up 6 to 8%, you're talking about real money. What we also know is that there is an enormous amount of fraud in Medicaid. I mean, we know that. There are a lot of studies out there, and not everyone can agree on how much, but I have seen studies from reputable think tanks that show that Medicaid fraud, stealing in the Medicaid program, runs between $1.1 and $1.2 trillion over a 10-year period. Can you imagine what we could do to lower interest rates or to reduce taxes if we could save $1.2 trillion on our budget? Now, how does this happen? Well, first of all, why don't the states do a better job of controlling the fraud? And I say, why am I blaming the states? Well, because it's a federal state program, and the feds put up 67% of the money, but the states administer that program. And some states do a pretty good job. Some states do a very good job. Some states are terrible at it. I don't know exactly why that is, but every state, I want to make this clear, has fraud. I saw an audit done by our Inspector General in Louisiana a few years ago, and he talked about the incidence of fraud in the Medicaid program in Louisiana, the people who were getting Medicaid who didn't qualify. And I said, can you send me a list of all the people you found in the Medicaid program who didn't qualify, who were making too much money? I don't want names. I just want the amounts of money that they were making and how long they'd been on Medicaid. And he sent me the list. And if I stacked it up here, I could stand on it and paint the ceiling. I mean, we had people making $150,000, $200,000, $250,000 a year getting Medicaid. Now, that was the state's fault for not checking. Some people say the states don't have any incentive. That's a cynical view. I prefer not to believe that's true. But they see Medicaid as free money since the federal government is picking up most of the tab. I prefer not to think that's true, but it's probably true to some extent. The point is that if our states would do a better job administering the Medicaid program, and stopping the stealing, we could save $1.2 trillion over the next 10 years to help people reach the point where they don't have to sell blood plasma to go to the grocery store. You probably think I'm going to talk about Minnesota, and I'm not. We all know what happened in the Medicaid program in Minnesota. The state of Minnesota basically declared that Medicaid was an open bar. Just come on down, and if you want Medicaid and you want the Medicaid money and you want to steal some, you're welcome to it. I hate to say that, but that's what happened. And I hope every single person who was involved in that stealing up there goes to jail. Every single one. But what I wanted to talk about was, and again, every state has this problem, but some have it worse than others. And one of the ones besides Minnesota that seems to have a problem controlling stealing in the Medicaid program is California. Now, California spends an enormous amount of money on Medicaid. They spend about $220 billion a year. The federal taxpayer puts up $140 billion of that. So the federal taxpayer, the taxpayers who pay money to the federal government put up most of the money. Not all of it, but most of the money. How much does the federal government put up vis-a-vis the state government? Well, in the Obamacare portion of Medicaid, the federal government puts up $9. So for every $1 that the state government puts up for the Medicaid program, the federal government puts up $9. Wow. And some of the public officials in California have started to look at this as free money, just free money. And they don't try to fight the fraud. Now, how do you stop the fraud? One thing a state can do is investigate people who claim they're health care providers. We saw this as a problem in Minnesota. If you claim to be a home health provider, you're supposed to have a minimum level of qualification. If you claim to offer to provide after-school services, you're supposed to have a certain level of qualification. I don't think the state government in California even checks. We've got every fly-by-night artist in America, it seems, going to California to become a health care provider to get some of the money. And a lot of the times when they get that money, the money never makes it to the patient. They steal it. California, for example, has 12% of the population. In the last decade, they have been responsible for 50% of all of the new healthcare providers formed in America. Most of them are social assistants and so-called healthcare establishments. And there's an enormous amount of fraud there. We saw that once again in Minnesota, which has been publicized more, where people say, I'm now a healthcare provider. Give me the money, and so I can help people. And you give this fly-by-night healthcare provider money, and they never help people. So that's one way. The other way that you can control the spending in Medicaid is to be careful about the services you offer. You want to spend the Medicaid money on people who need it. You want to spend the Medicaid money on people who need it because they're sick. That's why we passed Medicaid. But states, once again, administer their own Medicaid programs, and for the most part, they get to decide what services their Medicaid program pays for. Now, supposedly the federal government has to sign off on it, and clearly we've got to do a better job there, and I'll save that topic for another day. But what got my attention about California, despite the fact that they have thousands and thousands of these fly-by-night so-called healthcare providers who the state government in California happily gives money to, and sometimes some of that money gets to a patient, but most of the time it gets into their pocket. What got my attention was the services that California's state government will pay for in its Medicaid program with money from the federal government, which has been provided by the American people. Here's an example. And this came from an article, this isn't my research, this came from an editorial in the Wall Street Journal, a recent editorial, May 16, 2026. In California, under its state government's definition of Medicaid, the California Medicaid program will pay for tribal prayers. The California Medicaid program will pay for exorcisms. The California Medicaid program will pay for herbal medicines. The California Medicaid program will pay for meal deliveries. In some cases, the California Medicaid program will pay for in-home chefs. Thousands of businesses have popped up in California that literally cater to Medicaid patients. The Medicaid program in California will pay for sports club fees. The Medicaid program in California will pay for a gym membership. The Medicaid program in California will actually pay student loans. They do it under the guise of, well, we want to encourage people to become healthcare providers, and they can't do it if they have onerous financial burdens, so we'll pay for their health care. Now, once again, Medicaid is supposed to be for sick people. When you're spending other people's money, it's real easy to expand beyond that. The Medicaid program in California will pay for scooters. I get that. Sometimes that might be necessary. Bicycles, but it'll also pay for music lessons. The Medicaid program in California will also pay for art lessons. This money didn't just fall from heaven. We all thank heaven for it, but it came out of people's pockets. And that's how we end up having $1.2 trillion over a 10-year period stolen from the Medicaid program. Money that was put up by the American people. It happens in every state. Some are worse than others. Minnesota's an example, but so is California. When you're taking American taxpayer dollars and spending them on an exorcism or a gym membership, something's wrong. And if we want to lower the cost of living in America, if if we want to be able to find the money to give people a tax break, if we want to lower interest rates in America, one of the easiest, best ways to do it is to try to fight the fraud in our Medicaid program. It's as simple as that. $1.2 trillion over 10 years of fraud. This didn't just happen, Mr. President, as you know. This has been going on for a long, long time. And I want to give credit where credit is due. Dr. Oz, our new CMS director, the Department of Justice are both working to try to stop this fraud. But it has been there since God was a baby. And it's got to stop now. And that's what I wanted to, and this is, it's out in the open, and this is not something I'm accusing anybody of unfairly, okay? These are just the facts. So with that, Mr. President, I thank you for your attention. I thank Kaylin for her great work, and peace out.
As the echoes of this hearing fade, one thing remains etched in the minds of everyone who watched. The illusion of the untouchable elite has been shattered. Senator John Kennedy didn't just walk into that room with questions, he walked in with a mirror, forcing D.C. to look at its own corruption. We watched as years of carefully crafted jargon and bureaucratic lies fell apart in under 10 minutes. The truth isn't complicated. It's just been suppressed. And today, Kennedy became the hammer that broke the seal of silence. This is a warning to every official who thinks they can spend taxpayer money like a drunk sailor with no accountability. The game of hiding behind classified folders and no-comment answers is officially dead. Kennedy proved that when you have the receipts, the giants aren't so big after all. But don't be fooled. The system will try to bury this. They will try to silence this video because they know that an informed public is their greatest threat. Now, I want to hear from you. The evidence is on the screen, and the panic is in their eyes. Do you believe this is the end of their game, or is the fight just beginning? Scroll down to the comments right now and type the word "done" if you believe their time is up. We are tracking every single response to show the algorithm that we want more of this truth. Smash that like button, subscribe, and share this with someone who needs to wake up. There is a video on your screen right now that goes even deeper into this scandal. Click it immediately to see the full exposure. Thank you for watching, and remember, the truth is out, and it's finally over. We'll see you in the next one.
Many Louisianians read the stories about the welfare fraud in Minnesota and, frankly, in other states, and it makes them nauseous. I feel the same way. That's why I have been working for years, literally years, to target welfare fraud, especially the fraudsters who conduct fraud in the name of deceased Americans. In 2023 alone, for example, the federal government sent $1.3 billion, not million, billion. The federal government sent...
What you're about to see is the kind of moment that makes Washington nervous, because this is what happens when the paperwork starts talking louder than the talking points. Senator John Kennedy didn't just walk into this hearing to trade speeches. He came in with facts, numbers, and a line of questioning that made it much harder for the people in charge to keep the real story buried. And once the evidence started coming out, the entire tone of the room changed. This wasn't just another political argument. This felt like the moment the cover story started cracking in public. If you've ever wondered how government agencies move money, hide behind language, and hope nobody follows the trail closely enough to ask what really happened, stay with me, because this clip may be one of the clearest examples yet of Kennedy forcing hidden details into the open. Watch carefully, because the documents, the hesitation, and the reaction tell you far more than the polished answers ever will.
Mr. Duncan, every now and then I see an article that says something like, federal government spends $25 million to study whether a man can breastfeed, or the federal government spends $50 million to try to teach a neighborhood squirrel to code. And I think, how did that stuff get in there? I sit on the Appropriations Committee. We're supposed to put together a budget. Sometimes we do. This year we probably won't, because my friend and colleague, Senator Schumer, wants to shut down the government to create chaos, to try to get the Graham-Plattner wing of his party to love him. But I digress. That stuff's not in the budget when we vote on the budget. Where's it come from?
Well, Senator, I appreciate the question, and you've been a champion on these issues, and I would note your work on the rescissions process, highlighting some of these outrageous spending we've seen in the past. So I think this is why our updates to CFR, which governs grant making across the federal enterprise, is so critical.
Yeah, tell the American people what that is.
Absolutely. Appreciate the
Like you're
opportunity.
talking to a 10th grader.
Appreciate the opportunity to. So fundamentally, some of the most important things are to ensure that grants are not going to divisive DEI ideologies. They're not going to support illegal immigration. They're not going to support radical gender ideologies. Those are pretty fundamental.
And stupid stuff, right?
And stupid stuff generally, yes, sir. I think the arbiter of ensuring that things do not go to stupid stuff, as you put it, is ultimately a political appointee. One of the president's people that is associated with the administration, appointed by the president, comes in and does a final issuance review before grant dollars go out. That's fundamentally about accountability. It's not intended to usurp peer review or anything like that. It's about making sure that
Let me stop you for a second, Mr. Duncan, because we're going to run out of time. Congress never sees this kind of spending porn, does it, until after the fact. Is that correct?
Senator, that's correct.
It's not in our budget. Is that correct?
Senator, that is correct.
But somebody in the administrative state decides that they ought to spend $25 million to study whether a man can breastfeed. Right?
Yes, sir.
Now, that's what I mean by stupid stuff. Do you consider that stupid stuff?
Absolutely, yes, sir.
And what you're going to do at OMB is try to stop the stupid stuff. Try to find out who made that grant and say, no. We're not going to spend money on this. And by the way, if you do it again, you're fired.
Yes,
Is that
sir,
right? That's what you guys are going to do?
Yes, sir.
It's about time. Thank you.
Sure.
All right, let me ask you one other question. When moms and dads lie down to sleep at night and can't, right now, at this point in time, what's the first thing they're worried about?
I would imagine it would be the ability to support their families.
Yes. Cost of living. Part of that's inflation. Look, I remember inflation's very sticky. I remember when it started, it got up 9%. You know, President Trump didn't father this child, but he's got to raise it. Cost of living. Thank you for being straightforward. Now, have you ever gone to let me preface this by saying, I've got two brothers who are doctors, so I love healthcare providers. But have you ever gone to a healthcare provider and then you get a bill saying you owe us $1,400? And you go, what the hell? Has that ever happened to you?
Yes, sir, it actually has.
It's happened to a lot of Americans because the way many of our hospital or healthcare providers bill makes no sense. And so they turn it over to a collection agency, and the collection agency says, look, you pay this $1,400. We can't explain. We won't explain to you how it got here. If we did, we'd have to drown you in the Pacific. But if you don't pay it, we're going to turn it into the credit rating agencies and ruin your credit. Now, why don't, if we want to help the American people, why don't we, at least for a period of time, say healthcare debt is not going to be reported to the rating agencies? It's not, we're not saying you don't have to pay it. We're not saying it's not due. We're not saying you can't be sued. But this debt's being reported to rating agencies when people can't pay it, and then their credit gets ruined, and it makes it even harder for them to live. That's a swell idea, isn't it?
Senator, I think the administration has been very committed to price transparency and ensuring that.
Yeah,
folks
but what
aren't hit
about
with
that
this.
idea?
I'm happy to take that back and determine the administration's position on that matter.
How about it advocating for it?
I'm happy to work with you on this matter, absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, or Mr. Secretary, I think you're one of President Trump's best appointments. And I'm very impressed with the team that you put together. And I hope you're all willing to serve a long, long, long time. I agree with my friend Senator Coons. I think we need to look ahead. But I would be remiss if I didn't say this. As I might have mentioned before, I used to have a beagle named Roger. Loved him to death. He passed after 15, got a lot of years with him. But Roger, like all the beagles, would run off. He was incorrigible. And sometimes he'd come back a roadkill. And he'd hide it under my back porch. And what I saw in the last 30 days at the Department of Energy under the past administration looked like something Roger kept under my back porch. $78 billion, not million, $1 billion, as best I can remember, was shoveled out the door. And y'all had to clean it up. I'm not saying they were all bad grants and loans, but I'm saying a bunch of them were. And I just couldn't let that go without saying it. Now, I thought I heard you say, correct me if I'm wrong, that you see in our near future small modular nuclear reactors. Can you elaborate on that, or did I misunderstand you?
No, you are correct, Senator. Under one of President Trump's executive orders last year was to see if we could get small modular reactors, next generation reactor designs, critical, meaning running the full nuclear system by July 4 of this year, our nation's 250th birthday. And I sit here today, we still have 2.5 months for that date, but I believe we will have multiple small modular reactors critical, meaning running their full nuclear system before July 4 this year. I could not be more excited about that. This is a next generation of nuclear energy where when you can build things small, meaning build as much as possible inside factories, you can drive down costs, you can drive up efficiencies. I think we truly are going to launch a nuclear renaissance during this administration. I think it's going to have enormous benefits around our country. I couldn't be more excited about it. And I could go on for forever, so I'll stop.
Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Look, this is not a news flash. To some extent, our grid is a mess. We've made some strides in clean energy, wind, solar. We can't get them hooked up. You didn't father that child, but you got to raise it. What are we doing? What can Congress do to help?
I think there's challenges.
Do we need more transformers? What's the problem?
We need more transformers. We need more switchgear. We need more electrical equipment and electrical steel built in the United States, which is part of our supply chain efforts to build more of these equipments here. We need to apply artificial intelligence to these grid studies that you have to do when you put a new source on. They take years. That's crazy. But with artificial intelligence and I think some more common sense regulation, we're going to speed up these grid studies dramatically and prioritize of all the things that have their hand in the air to connect to the grid, which ones are going to be effective and reliable and improve the operation of the grid and help drive down the prices, and how can we get them approved and actual connection as quickly as possible.
My last question is about AI and quantum computing. Look, I'm very proud what American companies have done in artificial intelligence. I do think we're ahead of China, and what people don't like to talk about in China is AI is supposed to tell you the truth. In China, AI can tell you the truth, except they can't criticize the Chinese government. In the long run, that's going to bite them on the elbow. I support AI. I think it's going to make our lives better if it doesn't kill us first. I don't know what to believe about AI. A lot of the smart people talking about AI also are trying to sell an IPO. And I'm not saying they're not telling the truth, but I think they're trying to sell an IPO. I would strongly encourage you and your team the American people are plenty smart, but they're busy earning a living, to try to explain to them in basic terms, and frankly to Congress, how AI can be applied to energy production to make it more affordable and more efficient. Most Americans understand artificial intelligence, at least the general concept. They just don't know what the hell to do with it. And you don't need to comment on that, but you and the big brain sitting behind you, if you could do that for the American people, just centered on energy, and frankly do that for the members of Congress, you all deserve a pay raise.
Great advice, Senator. That's two takeaways I have from today that we will indeed carry out and we will deliver on at the department.
Okay.
I want to comment. I think you've just seen some political theater that's been demonstrated here with a lot of people that are up for nominations for the judiciary. I think I'd like to quote Justice Jackson on another point when she was asked about January 6th during her nomination. Quote, "It would be inappropriate to me to publicly weigh into any subject of political debate," end of quote. Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Congratulations, Judge. I think we ought to clear the air here. We all know what's going on. President Trump believes passionately that he won the 2020 election. And you're being asked these questions in hopes you will say that he didn't. Or in hopes that you will say that he did. Regardless of what you actually think, the further hope is that it'll cause the president to twist off and pull your nomination. And that's what's going on here. I'm not saying my good friend doesn't have the right to do that. Some would say it's kind of clever, but I don't think we ought to kid ourselves about what's going on. Number two, my job, I don't, this business of confirming judges has become too much of a shirts versus skins game for my taste. If I could change it, I would, but I can't. Picking somebody for the federal bench is as serious as 4 heart attacks and a stroke. You're there for life. We better get it right. And my job is to be in, as I see it, is to be an equal opportunity antagonist. Now, some would use another A word to describe me, and I realize that. But that's my job. And the two biggest things going for you, Judge, I don't know. You have Richard resume, it's impressive. Or John Hoven and Kevin Kramer. If they tell me you ought to be on the Court of Appeal, I believe them. Because they understand the role of a United States Senator. There are a couple of questions I want to ask you. Why did you? I heard your answer to Senator Durbin, but you were a sitting federal judge, and I know some other judges joined you, but you wrote a letter to Columbia saying, because of what I see happening at Columbia, I'll never hire one of your graduates. Why did you do that?
Senator, I was asked to sign the letter. It was indicated over a period of time. And the reason why is because it wasn't simply a student protest that was occurring. It was a protest that was resulting in violent conduct.
Well, I know what happened. I guess what I'm getting at is our federal judiciary has lost some of its legitimacy. I'm not laying it at your doorstep, but it has. And so many Americans now feel, because they're told, that judges are just politicians in robes. Okay? They're just mini legislatures. And that's not what our founders intended, and I don't think that's what they are. And so when a federal judge expresses a political opinion like you did and your colleagues did, how does that help our effort to help the public understand that judges aren't politicians?
Senator, I've been told a lot that federal judges have a lot of power, and you've said it, I think, in other hearings and contexts. But our power is limited. It's significantly limited to the case or controversy before us. We don't have the power of an executive. We don't even have the power to change laws like you do as a legislator.
I get that, Judge, and you're a judge. You can do what you want. I hope you won't do something like that again. I'm not saying you don't have the right, but when you adopt a political position, which I happen to believe with, frankly, to do that as a private lawyer is one thing. To do it as a sitting federal judge is quite another. And I just don't think it's a good thing. That's my personal opinion. You don't tweet anymore, do you?
I do not.
Okay. You don't go on social media at all?
I go on social media to follow other people, including...
Sure, but not to post.
Not at all. In fact, I think I know the name of your elliptical.
Yeah. Margaret and I had a date Sunday night. She won.
In the carport.
In my carport. She won. Thank you. I'm over. I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman.
So this boils down to three big questions. What was the main goal? What did it take to accomplish that goal? And are Americans willing to pay the price if more is required to achieve that goal? Joining me now is Louisiana Republican Senator John Kennedy. Senator, thanks for being with us here today. Let's get your reaction. From what you know so far to this memorandum of understanding, what is your reaction to this potential deal?
Well, here's what I know, Will. All day long, members of the media in Washington have been running around like lizards on a hot rock. What do you think about the agreement? What do you think about the deal? What if the deal says that? What if the deal doesn't do this? And I'll tell you what I told them. If you don't know, shut up. None of us have seen the document. Here's what I do know. based on what we've done and what the president and vice president have said. I know that the Strait of Hormuz is now open. The blockade on both sides has been lifted. I know that the price of oil and therefore the price of gasoline is coming down. I know that the document is conceptual, about a page and a half. It's basically a deal to make a deal. I know that Iran is immeasurably weaker than it was a year ago. We have bombed the crap out of them. There are huge swaths of Iran that look like something out of Mad Max 4. Iran has never been weaker. We've destroyed most of their nuclear program that we know about. Their fissile material, most of it anyway, is buried underneath the earth. We've destroyed a lot of their missiles and their drones and their production plants. It'll take 20 years for Iran to recover, and I don't know where they're going to get the money. China's not going to give it to them. We're not. Russia won't give it to them. Now, here's what I don't know. Will Iran make a deal? I don't know. Based on their history, we may be wasting the next 60 to 90 days. These religious zealots that run Iran, they learn to lie before they learn to talk. They think they're on a mission from God. They do. They're crazy as a bedbug. And in the past, they've always lied and refused to cooperate. But if they don't cooperate, we have devastated that country so badly. They have no air defenses. We can fly anywhere we want to. If they start their nuclear warheads program again, we will know immediately, and we can bomb the crap out of them again. And I think the world is safer after what America has done, and that's just my opinion.
So really quickly, Senator, it sounds like you know this as well as I do, Senator. There are some critics, not just within the media or on the left, but on the right, and right there, not just in the media, but around you on Capitol Hill, Republicans who are concerned about what they know of as the potential details of this deal. It sounds like your response is, look, mission accomplished in many of the ways that was laid out. Iran has been set back 10, 15, 20 years. And if the strait is now open, even if they don't live up to a deal or the deal doesn't live up to your expectations, we have in many ways accomplished victory?
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. I've never thought that we would be able to get their fissile material without sending in American troops. And I was very hesitant about that. I've never thought Iran's going to step up and say, okay, you're right, we're giving up our ambition to have a weapon. And if they said it right now, I wouldn't believe them. Look, there are limits to what we could do, but we did what we needed to do. And let me say it again. Iran looks like something out of Mad Max 4. They're a lot weaker than they were, and therefore the world's a lot safer.
All right, Senator Kennedy, I think we're going to continue this conversation. I appreciate it, and I think we need to bring clarity on what was our objective, what was accomplished, and if the objective was something more for many of the critics, what would be required in terms of investment to accomplish what you don't like in this potential deal. We'll continue this conversation. Senator Kennedy,
and that is exactly why this kind of hearing hits so hard with viewers. Because once the evidence starts surfacing, the conversation changes completely. It stops being about spin, and it starts being about whether the public was given the full truth in the first place. That's what gives a clip like this real power. People can forgive political fighting. They can ignore rehearsed talking points. But when it starts to look like key facts, records, or decisions were being buried until somebody dragged them into the light, that creates a completely different emotional reaction. Now, viewers aren't just watching another Senate exchange. They're watching what feels like a public unmasking. And once that feeling sets in, retention goes up because people want to know just how deep the problem goes. They want to see whether Kennedy really found the weak point in the story and whether the people on the other side can do anything to recover from it. That's why the strongest Kennedy videos are usually not the ones with the most technical detail. They're the ones where the audience can feel the pressure building in real time, a pause that lasts too long, an answer that sounds too polished, a number that suddenly doesn't match the explanation, a document that changes the meaning of everything that came before it. Those are the moments that make viewers stop scrolling and stay locked in. Because deep down, they're not just reacting to the senator, they're reacting to the possibility that the official version of the story may be collapsing right in front of them. And when a video creates that feeling, it becomes much more than a hearing clip. It becomes a confrontation between the public story and the paper trail behind it. That is also why this title has strong click potential if you package it correctly. It's a disaster works because it creates immediate urgency, but the real retention comes from quickly proving why it's a disaster. Show the audience the records, show them the numbers, show them the line that changes the meaning of the hearing. If the first 20 seconds immediately deliver that payoff, people are far more likely to stay. And that is the only honest way to push toward big numbers. Not by making the title louder, but by making the first minute impossible to click away from. So now I want your take. Did Kennedy really uncover evidence they didn't want people to focus on? Or did this hearing simply expose how fragile the official explanation already was? Drop your answer below, because once viewers start connecting the statements to the paper trail, the people behind those decisions can no longer assume the public isn't paying attention.
I do not hate anyone. I do not hate anyone. I look for grace wherever I can find it.
Imagine waking up tomorrow and finding out that every single penny you spend, from your morning coffee to your monthly rent, is being tracked, monitored, and potentially blocked by a bureaucrat in Washington, D.C. It sounds like a dystopian movie, but Senator John Kennedy just walked into the Senate with the receipts to prove it's becoming a reality. Washington wants you to believe they're just modernizing the system, but Kennedy isn't buying the jargon. He just looked them in the eye and exposed the ultimate digital trap, a scheme designed to end financial privacy as we know it. Today, the game of shadows is officially over. You are about to witness the most brutal financial takedown in Senate history. Kennedy doesn't just ask questions, he delivers a final warning to the elites who think they own your future. But before we show you the moment that left the room in total silence, hit that subscribe button if you believe Kennedy is the only hero left fighting for your freedom. The trap has been set, but Kennedy is about to spring it. Let's get into it.
Senator Kennedy.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. General, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Senator.
In America, unlike other countries, where they let you die in a ditch, in America, if you're too poor to be sick, we'll pay for your doctor. Isn't that right?
It is.
And one of the programs we do that through is Medicaid.
Correct.
Okay. And this money for Medicaid, it didn't just fall from heaven. We thank heaven for it, but it came out of people's pockets, didn't it?
Every dime of it.
And some of that money is stolen, isn't it?
Yes.
And the states, not all of them, but many of them, allow it to be stolen, don't they?
Yes.
Let's take Medicaid in California, for example. I don't mean to just pick on California, but because this happens in other states. We saw it happen in Minnesota, for example. But in California, for every dollar that the California state government puts up for Medicaid, for the Obamacare portion of Medicaid, the federal taxpayer puts up $9, don't they? And so, is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
And so, as a result, California has allowed thousands and thousands of these social assistance and so-called health care providers pop up in California, haven't they?
Yes.
And some of those providers steal the money, don't they?
Yes, we know that to be true. Yes.
And the money never gets to the people they supposedly are trying to help. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
And the other way that California and others abuse the fact that they're putting up $1 and the American taxpayers putting up $9. Did I mention it was $9?
I think some say it's even more, but yes, 9 work.
They expand the services, don't they?
Yes.
Because some states like California, I don't want to paint with too broad a brush. It's not everybody in California state government, but it's a lot of them. They see this as free money, don't they?
They're not paying for it, yes.
Isn't it a fact that, for example, Medicaid in California will pay a provider to provide tribal prayers? I looked all this up.
I mean, I'll accept that. I didn't know that, but yes.
That California will actually pay a health care provider, I didn't know this was a medical expertise, to pay for exorcisms. Is that right?
I'll accept that, Senator, but that's.
They pay, the California Medicaid program will pay for herbal medicines, meal deliveries. They'll pay for housing. I don't know what housing has to do with health care. Is that correct?
Yes.
Were you aware that the Medicaid program using federal money, taxpayer money, will pay for an in-home chef?
Yes.
Okay.
Even if it's a family member, yes.
Yeah, they'll even pay for gymnasium fees through Medicaid in California. They'll pay for bicycles, scooters, gym memberships. Did you know that?
Yes, several states do, but California does for sure.
They'll even repay your student loans. Were you aware of that?
I was not aware of the student loans repayment.
Yeah, they'll repay somebody's student loans to encourage them to become a health care provider. I mean, California, they're just setting all kind of records. These folks are they're wild people. California's got 12% of the population. In the last 10 years, they're responsible for half of these new so-called health providers to provide exorcisms and other things. Now, what the hell are we doing about it? Why has this gone on for so long?
Senator, listen, it's a great question. And what you just described are programs that are allowed under the program. You have a whole other issue in California where a lot of these folks are just stealing the money, not even running it through for exorcism.
They're thieves, aren't they?
They're thieves, correct.
And California just watches it happen, don't they? Not everybody in California. The government does, doesn't it?
Well, that's the challenge in a lot of states, is that we don't have a state government, which you all have entrusted to run these programs and take care of the money that you all give them. There's state structures that absolutely do not do any compliance, and they don't do their job.
Because they don't have no incentive to. They're getting free money. Isn't that right?
Yes, I think so, yes.
We got to change this, General.
We're trying.
I call this a slush fund. You want to talk about slush fund? This is a tier 1 slush fund that's been going on for years and years and years. Billions, hundreds of billions of dollars is stolen.
Yes, Senator. And that's why, look, this department stood up a whole new fraud division, and AUSAs around the country prosecute fraud every day. So it's not as if we didn't have the work out there, but it's so systematically taking money from the American taxpayer that we very much believe that it needs its own stand-up structure, and I think it's true for the reasons that you just said.
If you need an exorcism, you can go to California, can't you?
Thank you, Senator.
Don't.
That was the chairman, not me.
Don't you think your hyperbolic statements undermine your credibility?
What hyperbolic statement did I make?
On February the 11th, 2026, you posted on Bluesky, quote, my words, or your words, not mine. The Democrats' video telling service members to ignore illegal orders didn't go far enough. They should have also urged them to refuse unethical orders, whether illegal or not. There are many things deemed legal that are still obviously unethical, and everyone should hold themselves to this higher law, end quote. Did I read that correctly?
I believe you did. Do you disagree with it? You think people should do unethical things in their capacity?
On December the 31st of 2025, you posted in front of God.
But wait.
In
Do
front
you,
of,
do you
in
disagree
front
with
of,
what
let
I
me
said?
finish my question.
I'm
You
sorry.
answer, sir. Sure. In front of God and country. You said, quote, they, referring to Republicans, think they can troll their way into us accepting ethnic cleansing. End quote. Your words, not mine. Did I read that correctly?
That was in regard to a
Did I
Department of
read that?
Homeland
Did I
Security
read
post
that?
about advocating 100 million deportations. That is what DHS has tweeted from their own account. 100 million deportations
hurts, doesn't
would be ethnic cleansing. You would be
Truth hurts,
removing
doesn't it?
1/3 of the country. So yes, there
Truth
are
can
people
just
within the
gut you like
Department
a
of
fish.
Homeland
And
Security.
you don't think this is hyperbolic? Give me 30 more seconds.
I think advocating 100 million deportations is
I'm having fun here,
ethnic
Mr. Chairman.
cleansing.
On February
Yes.
5th, you quoted you said the following on Bluesky.
Your time's
Quote,
up.
these are all good, but there's no enforcement mechanism. I'm sorry. Let me try a better one. On March 2nd, you said, quote, if you rule against Trump's population purge agenda, no hyperbole there, the nativists will name you, threaten you, and come after you. These judges are much braver than the ICE agents who hide behind masks while violating the Constitution.
They are
Close
much braver.
quote.
They put their names on their rulings and they stand behind their constitutional rulings. When I talk about population purge, I'm talking about the fact that they're trying to deport U.S.-born citizens, people born here. They are trying to deport them as well. So it's not a mass deportation agenda. It is also an agenda intended to reduce the population of the United States, including U.S.-born people. So these are not hyperbolic statements. I appreciate you reading my account. I appreciate
Here's
your
the good
research.
news.
What planet did you just, wait a minute, Mr. Chairman,
Wait.
what planet did you just parachute in from?
No. Hey, guys.
You trigger my gag reflex, Mr. Beaver.
We got a process here, and it's good to know you don't have an agenda. Senator King, just one point of clarification. Is it your position that a nonviolent illegal immigrant shouldn't be deported?
My position is that we should give people who are peaceful people a path to citizenship. You endorsed that principle for many years, Senator.
So no matter how many people come?
No, it should be based on whether people have a demonstrable basis to remain in the United States, which is whether they contribute to this country or whether they're a threat to it.
I guess
we should have all law
I guess what you
enforcement
don't
focus
understand,
on threats.
and I don't want to, I'm familiar with the Gang of Eight bill, shut down illegal immigration. We did away with the magnets. We're going to give people a chance who've been here for a long time.
Your bill had the exact opposite approach of what this Department of Homeland Security is carrying out.
Listen. For 4 years, Biden obliterated the border. 11 million people came in. And the bill I was working on would have prevented that. He took everything we were trying to do to stop illegal immigration, be fair to the ones here, and blew a hole in it, and now we got 11 million more, and you want to give them amnesty. They'll never stop. Senator Grassley.
Tell me that, I think I heard you say that some people, some folks who've come to our country and are trying to get status to stay, have applied to the Department of Health of DHS, and they've paid money, and DHS is doing nothing?
Oh, that's right. Yep, they're sitting on their applications, not processing them.
That's a pretty bold statement. How many people, I'm not saying you're wrong, I don't know. How many people we're talking about?
About half of the immigrant flow right now.
So
90 countries are affected by the State Department ban.
How many people is that?
Well, it's at least 300,000 abroad and probably twice that when you consider the people already in the U.S.
So you're saying that 300,000 folks have gone to DHS to seek some kind of permanent status or semi-permanent status to stay. At least 300,000, and they've paid money to DHS, and DHS has done nothing. Is that what
That's right. Yeah, they're sitting on their applications.
Well, who
or they're
at
just
DHS is
putting
doing
them in the
that?
trash.
Who at DHS is doing this?
Oh, it's Joseph Edlow. He's
Who
in
is
charge of
Joseph
it. He
Edlow?
came up with this policy to just.
Who is he?
He's the head of USCIS. Joseph Edlow is the head of USCIS. He came up with this
He's
policy
at DHS?
where he is just...
Slow down a minute, man.
he's just-
You've had too much coffee. He's at DHS?
I'm just from New Jersey. So.
I understand. Great state, too. Who does he report to?
Secretary Noem, of course.
Okay. Does Secretary Noem know whether this...
I don't know what Secretary Noem knows, but she's aware of the general tenor of this
Well,
administration.
what's his name?
Joseph Edlow.
Mr. Edlow. Who's his boss?
Secretary Noem.
Oh, okay. And you can document all this?
Oh, absolutely. They put out a memorandum saying we're not processing these people, and Secretary Rubio is involved as well when it comes to the
Would
State
you send
Department.
me that memo, please?
I will absolutely send that to you.
I went way over. I'm sorry. I'm sorry, Joe.
I appreciate that.
Senator
Thank you.
Kennedy, I'm informed that USCIS is slowing adjudication because of the huge backlog and the lack of vetting of these migrants during the Biden administration is the reason that we've been given.
Yeah, I don't know. I just heard Mr. Beer, and I'm not saying he's right or wrong. Those are pretty bold allegations.
Senator Kennedy.
Mr. Secretary, how many employees were there at HHS when you took over?
82,000.
How many do you have today?
62,000.
Okay.
It's about the level it was in 2019, right before COVID.
Is this the first time that an institution in America has ever downsized?
I don't think so. I think private and public institutions have historically.
Microsoft just announced that they were going to reduce their workforce by 6,000 people. You think that'll be the end of Microsoft?
Senator, we wouldn't have reduced anybody.
You think that'll be the end of Microsoft?
I don't think so, Senator.
Meta, I still call them Facebook, just announced they're going to reduce their workforce by 3,000 people. You think that'll be the end of Meta?
I imagine it will not.
Yeah. Think maybe the people at Meta know what they're doing?
I think that they do. They make a lot of money, Senator.
Do you hate NIH?
I love NIH. I grew up with NIH. I visited when I was a boy. I loved science, and those were my favorite afternoons, visiting the labs.
Do you hate medical research?
No, I think we need to lead the world in medical research in this country.
In fact, isn't it true, Mr. Secretary, that you would like to see more money spent on medical research?
Obviously, I'm the secretary of this department. No secretary wants to see his budget cut.
Well, one way of doing that, it seems to me, would be to stop some of the stealing. And let me tell you what I mean by that. Let's suppose you give NIH gives a university $100 million to research, for medical research, to research a cure. And that university takes $30 million of it, doesn't spend it on the research. They use it to subsidize the rest of their university. Does that show a commitment to medical research?
No, and I mentioned before the example of Stanford, which was taking 78% in indirect costs, and we don't know what they were spending.
That's theft, isn't it?
It's not a good
in
way to
Louisiana,
spend
we call
federal
that stealing.
taxpayer dollars.
We call that stealing. Is there any doubt in your mind that a lot of universities are taking this NIH money, which is supposed to be spent on medical research, and using it to fund other parts of their university? Is there any doubt in your mind, Bobby?
Oh, and Senator, the other people who are writing grants, like the Gates Foundation, the Rockefeller Foundation, they paid 10% to 15% in indirect costs. We were paying 50, 60, 70%.
So, in fact, what you're doing is adding money to medical research.
We will be able to fund many, many, many more studies by eliminating that $9 billion, at least part of that $9 billion cost.
Okay. I want to ask you about LAHEAP. Are you familiar with this GAO report they did on LAHEAP? LAHEAP?
I am not, Senator.
They found, they audited 7 states. They found 11,000 dead people getting LAHEAP grants. You familiar with that?
No, but that is pretty typical of many of the other programs that we're working
Some
with.
of they found prisoners getting grants, didn't they? Were they using the grants to heat their jail cell? They found 1,000 federal employees getting the grants with federal salaries that greatly exceeded the income limits. They found some of those folks living in $1 million homes. I got 18 seconds. Why do we allow highly processed foods in America?
That's a complicated question, but it's driven by profits to a food industry that is making money by poisoning American kids, and they don't do it abroad. They make the same products for Canada and for Europe that do not contain many of those chemicals.
You understand, Mr. Secretary, there's nothing you can do that's going to make many of my Democratic colleagues happy. You get that, don't you?
I do understand. I'm coming to understand that, Senator.
Yes. Thank you.
Senator Murray, welcome. Nice to see you, and I'll turn it over to you for questions.
Thank you very much, Chair Capito, Senator Baldwin. I look forward to working with you both.
Congratulations to all of you. Judge Dubose, am I saying your name right?
That's correct, Senator.
Okay. We don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to be direct. I think most of my questions are designed to be yes or no. Are you still a Marxist?
Thank you for the question, Senator.
You don't have to thank me. We'll say you are welcome.
I am not, nor have ever been a Marxist.
Well, you gave an interview in 2000 to the Feminist Press. In fact, you didn't turn it over to us. We had to ask for it. We found it on our own. And you then turned it over to us. And this is what you were describing your time working in a coffee shop. You said, quote, the kids would come into the cafe all the time. We'd talk about what they're doing. We'd talk about their classes. And I was in my Marxist phase. So you used to be a Marxist, but you're not now?
No, Senator, if I may, the context of the first of that interview, I had no idea that interview was something that was going to be published. I did an interview with the
Did you mean what you said, whether it was published or not, or whether we'd find it? Trying to understand what you believe. You said I was in my Marxist phase.
Thank you, Senator.
Still in your Marxist phase, or was that in the past?
No, Senator, if I may explain.
Sure.
I was a political science major. When I graduated from college, I immersed myself in a ton of political theory. I read Hobbes, I read Locke, I read Rousseau, I read Marx. I went through a phase where I was into Eastern religion, where I read the Tao Te Ching, the Analects of Confucius. So I suspect, and I don't know that quote with the article, I don't know if she was referring to what I was studying at the time, but as a political science major and as a theorist and someone who was considering teaching a course in political theory, I immersed myself in those things.
But she didn't refer to anything. She meaning, I assume you're referring to the reporter who interviewed. These are your words, and you didn't say I'm in my Hobbes phase. You didn't say, second, I'm in my Locke phase. You didn't say I'm in my Rousseau phase. You said I was in my Marxist phase, and my question is real simple. Are you still a Marxist?
Senator, I've never been a Marxist, and I'm not a Marxist today.
Okay. All right. Have you ever served as lead counsel in a federal bench trial?
No, Senator. With my experience as both a state prosecutor, as an in-house counsel at Schneider Electric, doing very complex compliance and regulatory work, and my work as a district court sitting judge handling general
Yes,
jurisdiction.
ma'am. I've read your resume. I just want to get through these questions. Have you ever served as lead counsel in a federal jury trial?
No, Senator, I have not.
Okay. Have you ever attended a federal jury trial and
No,
watched
Senator.
it live?
No, no. No, Senator.
Have you ever watched a federal jury trial on TV?
I don't believe that federal trials are televised, so no, I have not, Senator.
Have you ever watched any trial on television?
Senator, I handle and preside over trials every single day as a state district court judge. We follow the rules of evidence, criminal procedure, civil procedure. So I feel that with my experience, that I am well suited and capable to make the transition from our state district court to our U.S. district court.
Okay. When you were practicing law, did you ever draft a motion or a brief applying the federal rules of evidence?
No, Senator. As a state prosecutor.
I'm sorry, you said what?
I said no, Senator.
No, okay. When you were practicing law, did you ever draft a motion or a brief applying the federal rules of civil procedure?
Well, I believe that there were times at Schneider Electric giving advice to business units regarding the federal acquisition regulations, that I would draft briefs to give them counsel as to how to be compliant with the federal rules. So in that respect, the answer would be yes.
Okay. What's an interpleader action?
Interpleader action is a third party who's going to intervene in a civil suit. They're not a primary party.
Okay. What's voir dire?
Voir dire is the process with which jurors are questioned by the state and by defense and prosecutors to serve on a
Have
panel.
you ever conducted a voir dire in federal court?
Not in federal court.
Okay. I'm going to yield back 6 seconds, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Senator Whitehouse.
Just to clarify the record, Judge Dubose, do you recall when that interview was done, the interview that Senator Kennedy referred to?
No, Senator, I don't. And if I recall, and I was brought to my attention yesterday, that was never an interview that I did that I thought was going to be published. I never reviewed it. I didn't. It was an undergrad student who was interested in teaching, who spent 20 minutes.
What were you doing at the time?
I was teaching.
So this was before you even went to law school. This was
Yeah, I was really early.
many years ago.
It was, Senator.
Perhaps during the time when my colleague, Senator Kennedy, was a Democrat. Showing that people can change their views, even if it were true that you were then in a Marxist phase.
Senator Graham.
Mr. Chairman, my name was invoked.
I noticed.
As a proud Democrat, we were like
My
that part of
name
your
was
history.
invoked, Mr. Chairman. Now, I just want to let the record reflect, and I love Senator Whitehouse.
Uh-oh.
But I'll tell you one thing, I've never been a Marxist. I've never been a Marxist. And I've never admitted I was a Marxist and then not turned the document over to this committee. We had to find it. And we did. And now your testimony, the testimony under oath today is, I didn't say that. The reporter said that. No, the witness said that. And then the testimony is, well, I didn't mean it to become public. That's not the issue. So, you know, if we won't get personal here, we can.
Senator Graham.
Thank you. Let's agree on the following. A Louisiana Democrat's probably not a Marxist. But the bottom line is, why wasn't it available to the committee, Mr. Bell?
Thank you for the question, Senator. I had no idea that the article existed. When I did the interview with that undergrad student, it was for a paper for a class.
It's something you didn't know about.
I was in an interview with a young lady who was interested in teaching as an undergrad, and I was just sharing my transition, how I went to be into teaching.
I understand. Your testimony is, this is not something I've seen before. Had you seen it before?
No, Senator.
Okay, so if you hadn't seen it, you didn't know about it, so that's why you didn't turn it over.
That's correct.
Okay, just make sure of that. Mr. Ali, is that right?
Yes, Senator.
You were head of the MacArthur or Associated MacArthur Justice Center, is that correct?
Now, let me say a word about Minneapolis. There's a lot we know. There's a lot we don't know. I want to talk about 3 things we do know. Number 1, the loss of life in Minneapolis was a tragedy. And if you can't admit that, you have a padlock on your heart. It was a tragedy. We don't have all the facts. I know everyone's seen the videos, but the people involved we haven't been interviewed. There are a lot of facts we have, but a lot of facts we don't have. And I am not going to rush to judge. I'm not going to rush to judge. President Trump has promised a full and thorough and transparent investigation. And I thank him for that. But regardless of what we find out, we all have to concede, we all should concede that the loss of life in Minneapolis was a tragedy. And I'm sorry it happened. Number 2, this is the second thing that I know. You don't have to be Einstein's cousin. You don't have to be a senior at Caltech to know that illegal immigration is illegal. Duh. It's illegal. And those of us who believe that no one is above the law, we all say we believe that. I believe it. No one, those of us who say that no one is above the law have to concede that people in our country illegally are not above the law either. The law applies to them as well. Our immigration statutes are not second-tier laws. They matter just as much as the other statutes that have been passed by the elected members of Congress. And just like the other laws, the immigration laws have consequences and should have consequences if you violate them. Now, so I guess what I'm saying, Mr. President, is I support enforcement of our immigration laws. Now, how you enforce those laws, matters. Those laws, like all laws, have to be enforced in accordance with due process. Those immigration statutes, like all laws, have to be enforced in accordance with equal protection. Those laws have to be enforced in accordance with a well-known Supreme Court case, 1968, called Terry v. Ohio, which sets forth the standards. Reasonable suspicion is the standard chosen by the Supreme Court, by which someone can be stopped and questioned when a law enforcement official doesn't have probable cause. Terry v. Ohio has to be followed. So, number 1, illegal immigration is illegal. We should enforce our immigration laws, but how we enforce them matters. Third and final point. You have the right to protest in America. Let me say that again. You have the right to protest in America. You do not have the right to protest violently. And in fact, violence, as you protest, undermines the morality of the thing that you're protesting over. Let me say that again. Violence, if you choose violence when you protest, that undermines the morality of the movement that you say your movement is based upon. You know who else understood that? Dr. King. King understood it. Gandhi understood it. Mandela understood it. Violently protesting, not protesting, but violently protesting undermines the morality that you say your cause is built upon. It's also dangerous. It's dangerous it's dangerous and it's stupid. It's 12-piece bucket of stupid. Because when you protest violently, when you interfere with a cop or an ICE officer, it's not going to end well. It's not. Under the best of circumstances, these officers are trying to enforce federal law. And the people with respect to whom they're trying to enforce federal law are, in most cases, I'm not going to say all cases, but in most cases are criminals. Not criminals because they're here illegally, though that too is a violation of our law, but criminals because they have violated other laws, in many cases felonies. And those ICE officials, those cops are scared. They're scared. They're dealing with someone who could be armed, someone who could be dangerous. So you've got a powder keg. And when protesters choose to protest violently and harass those ICE officials and blow whistles in their ears and block their way and spit in their faces and curse them and curse their children, they're giving off sparks in a powder keg. And it's not going to end well in many cases. And the truth of the matter is, it's been my experience in life, most, I'm not going to say all, most cops will leave you alone unless you do illegal stuff. So, as we go forward in America and try to enforce our laws in conformity with the United States Constitution, as we go forward together in America, and while we're respecting people's constitutional rights, we respect our law enforcement officials who are doing a very difficult job. As we go forward in America today, as the President has promised, to have a full and fair and transparent investigation of the tragic loss of life in Minneapolis, I hope we can keep those three things that I think all of us can agree upon in mind. I'm sorry we're at this point, but I believe that our future can be better than our present, and certainly than our past. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the floor to my esteemed colleague. Mr. President, in a few minutes, we're going to be voting on Senate Resolution 526. And I wanted to spend a few moments explaining what my resolution would do. First, it's a resolution. It's not a bill. This resolution will only affect the United States Senate. It will not affect the United States House of Representatives. Very simply, this is what my resolution would do. When we shut down government, and by that I mean, of course, when Congress, House and Senate refuses to provide funding for an agency in government, in some cases all of government, and those agencies or all of government, as the case may be, have to shut down. That means that federal employees, for the most part, aren't being paid. My resolution would require, or stipulate rather, that senators wouldn't be paid either. It's called shared sacrifice. Now, I want to be clear so my colleagues understand exactly what this resolution would do. Because I've worked hard to get the votes to pass this, and I've had to make a few accommodations. First, a senator would not lose his or her salary. The money would be escrowed. The senator's salary just would not be available to that senator while we're in a shutdown. But once the shutdown is over, you'll get your money. Number two, again, to repeat, this bill will not apply to the House of Representatives. It will only apply to the United States Senate. The House can take care of its own business. Because of the 27th Amendment, and in order for my resolution to be constitutional, the resolution will not take effect until the day after the midterm elections. The 27th Amendment provides pretty clearly that our compensation as members of the Senate and the House, for that matter, though this bill doesn't apply, this resolution doesn't apply to the House, can't be changed until after an election. And the Senate's election, of course, is midterms. If I were king for a day, I'm not, I don't aspire to be, but if I were, I'd make this resolution effective immediately, because I'm very concerned. I hope I'm wrong. If I am wrong, I'll apologize. I'm very concerned that my Senate colleagues on the Democratic side are going to try to shut down government yet again right before the elections, to try to create chaos to affect the midterm elections. If I'm wrong in that prediction, I will come here and apologize to every senator by name. But so if I could, I would make this resolution apply immediately. Frankly, if I were also king for a day and I wanted to stop government shutdowns, I'd do more than this. I would do two things. I would say that if government shuts down, a senator loses his pay. It's not escrowed, and you get it back later. You just don't get your pay. I would also say that you can't leave Washington. You can't go home. If you make people forfeit their pay and tell them they can't leave Washington, we won't have any more shutdowns. And everybody in this body knows that. But I can't pass that. I would if I could, but I can't. So to repeat one more time, all my resolution would do would say that if we choose to shut down government, you're not going to be paid. You'll get your money later, but while we're in a shutdown, you're not going to be paid. It's about shared sacrifice, Mr. President. I mean, what we have done this year in terms of keeping government open. Last October, I looked it up before I came to the floor. Last October, we shut down government 43 days. It's the longest shutdown in history. And we had FBI agents and National Park Rangers and CDC scientists. Our staff here in Congress, nobody was getting paid. And then 3 months later, after we finally got out of that 43-day shutdown, we shut down the Department of Homeland Security. It was shut down for 76 days. And this is all in 1 year. We ought to hide our heads in a bag. It's got to stop. Shutting down government should not be our default solution to our refusal to work out our issues and our differences. So that's what my Senate resolution will do. Vote how you want to. I'm not saying this is going to stop all shutdowns. As I say, if I were king for a day, I know what to pass that will stop them, but maybe this will help. So vote for it. If you want to, don't vote for it. If you don't want to, follow your heart. Be sure and take your brain with you, because this is about shared sacrifice. This is about putting our money where our mouth is. I yield the floor, Mr. President. Thank you for your time and attention. My work here is done.
As the silence takes over the chamber, the weight of Kennedy's words begins to sink in. We have watched him tear down the excuses and expose the cold, hard truth that they tried so desperately to hide behind complex economic terms. This wasn't just about a digital currency. It was about the very soul of American freedom. When you treat the hard-earned money of the people like a tool for control, you aren't just a bureaucrat anymore. You're a threat to the foundation of this country. And today, Kennedy was the shield that stood in their way. When Kennedy looked them in the eye and said, "It's finally over," he was sending a message to every globalist in DC. You cannot manage the American people into submission. The stutters, the panicked whispers, and the desperate glances we saw today are proof that they know they've been caught red-handed. DC is hoping you'll look away and go back to your daily life. But after what we've witnessed today, that is no longer an option. They are counting on your silence to complete their trap. But they didn't count on a man from Louisiana with enough common sense to blow the whole thing wide open. This community is the last line of defense against this digital betrayal. We want to hear from you right now. Do you trust the government with total control over your bank account? Or do you believe Kennedy is the only one who can still pull us out of this trap? Drop a comment below with the word trap if you want the truth to keep coming. We read every single comment, and your voice is the only thing they can't manage or silence. If you're ready to stand with Kennedy and protect our freedom, hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with everyone you know before it's suppressed. The trap has been exposed, but the fight for our future has just begun. Click the video on your screen right now to see Kennedy's other viral exposure that they tried to delete. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you in the next exposure.
Do you think Senator Gillibrand is a crook?
No, and I do not think all politicians are crooks.
And why did you call her a crook?
I did not call her a crook. Now, Senator, you need to focus on this bill. Right, you're doing this again. You did it the last hearing.
A tweet that you said the crypto industry is buying Congress and the White House. This won't end well. Why do you think the crypto industry is buying Senator Gillibrand?
Look at the campaign contributions from this industry.
You think they bought her?
I said, look at the campaign contributions.
You said they bought her. Do you think they bought her?
Senator, you need to focus on this bill.
What evidence do you have that she's a crook? I want to apologize to Senator Gillibrand.
I do not want you to have to apologize for passing legislation that destroys our economy.
For calling
you are distorting what I said, just like you did in the last hearing. You're wasting everybody's time, Senator.
You're a whack job.
Senator, you are wasting.
Well, I think we are next level whack job.
I think we are. Is this middle school, Senator?
I think you should apologize, Senator.
I think, Senator, you're wasting our time. This is not middle school.
Tonight, Senator John Kennedy walked into a hearing and said the quiet part out loud. Not inflation, not slogans, not spin. He started listing what Medicaid is allegedly paying for. Exorcisms, tribal prayers, in-home chefs, scooters, even gym memberships. And suddenly the entire hearing changed. Because once those words are spoken on camera, nobody in that room can pretend this is normal anymore. And the bigger question is the one millions of taxpayers are asking right now. If this is where the money is going, then who is protecting the people paying for it? In the next few minutes, you're going to watch Kennedy turn a routine exchange into one of the most uncomfortable moments in this debate. And by the end, you'll understand why this issue is hitting such a nerve across the country.
General, how are you?
I'm great. Thank you, Senator.
In America, unlike other countries, where they let you die in a ditch, in America, if you're too poor to be sick, we'll pay for your doctor. Isn't that right?
It is.
And one of the programs we do that through is Medicaid.
Correct.
Okay. And this money for Medicaid, it didn't just fall from heaven. We thank heaven for it, but it came out of people's pockets, didn't it?
Every dime of it.
And some of that money is stolen, isn't it?
Yes.
And the states, not all of them, but many of them, allow it to be stolen, don't they?
Yes.
Let's take Medicaid in California, for example. I don't mean to just pick on California, but because this happens in other states. We saw it happen in Minnesota, for example. But in California, for every dollar that the California state government puts up for Medicaid, for the Obamacare portion of Medicaid, the federal taxpayer puts up $9, don't they? And so, is that right?
That's correct, Senator.
And so as a result, California has allowed